explode the fuel tank from within, ripping the wing in half and triggering an inferno. But this one had apparently been a dud. Later that day, ground crew opened up the Tondileo to retrieve the unexploded ordnance. But when they tore apart the tank, they were shocked to find 11 whole shells stuck within. A single dud was incredible luck. 11 would have been nothing short of divine intervention. But as the armorers opened them up, a different reality came to light. Not a single one had explosive filling. They were empty, just a hollow piece of lead. All except for one. Rolled inside one of the shells was a piece of paper which had a message written in Czech. An intelligence officer scours the base for someone to translate. Its message is read to the crew. It says, "This is all we can do for you now." It had been sabotaged by an unknown and brave soul, imprisoned and forced into weapons manufacturing by the German army. He or she would never know it, but their actions directly allowed 10 men to return home. The entirety of Tondileo's crew would survive the war, even those who bailed over Germany. They were captured and remained in camps until their eventual liberation. Aruth was hailed as a hero by the other men. He ended the war with 17 confirmed victories and a dozen probables. He lived a long life and passed away in 1990. Today, a plaque in his memory lies on the Springfield, Massachusetts City Hall.
Spike planted.
It was June the 16th, 1943. Unescorted and vulnerable, a lone Boeing B-17E drones over the remote Solomon Sea. This four-engined flying fortress is now commonly known as Old 666, thanks to its original tail number that ended in 666. On board, 25-year-old Captain J. Ziemer Jr. and 8 crewmen enjoy a few minutes of calm in their armored warbird. Previously, it had been an old piece of junk that had been dragged to the end of the airstrip to be cannibalized for spare parts, before being commandeered by Ziemer. She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts. He made a lot of special modifications himself. Old 666 was a demon in the air. The crew upgunned the old bird so much that it seemed almost comical, and it became the most heavily armed bomber in the Pacific. Ziemer was loved by his men, as top turret gunner Johnny Abel later explained. "We thought so much of Captain Ziemer and had such trust in him and his ability that we didn't give a damn where we went, just so long as he wanted to go there. Anything okay by him was okay by us." The men are on a tough mission, a solo mapping run over the island of Bougainville in the Solomons. No escort, no formation, just them. And in a classic while you're at it boys moment, Commander told them that they need to also make a pass over the strategically important and incredibly well-defended Buka Island too. Now, over Buka, the captain and crew see a dozen A6M0s taking off from the airstrip on the island. Then, what looks like another 12 take flight. It's just a matter of time before their 1,000 horsepower Nakajima radial engines bring them in close to the lumbering B-17. Reaching altitude, the Japanese fighters circle menacingly just outside of gun range. But this B-17 is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and with a little luck, the Japanese pilots won't figure it out until it's too late. The crew have upgraded the number and caliber of guns. Old 666 is a 19-gun flying beast of a machine, and even the captain has a 50 caliber at his disposal. The Zeros make their move. From dead ahead, one starts in and towards the winged battleship. The closing speed between the two is approaching 700 miles an hour. Ziemer is first and unleashes a hail of 50 caliber rounds that knocks the Zero out of the sky. But fractions of a second later, a wall of cannon fire from another tears into the nose and cockpit. The blast and concussion send shrapnel into the arms and legs of Second Lieutenant Joseph Sarnowski. Though with incredible bravery, determination and resolve, Sarnowski crawls back to his gun and takes aim and shoots. His last act is to destroy another Zero before succumbing to his injuries. Captain Ziemer is now severely wounded in both legs, and worse yet, The rudder fields have been destroyed, but all the while, the Zeros keep coming as the gunners blast away at anything with wings, sending torrents of high-velocity tracer rounds through the white-hot barrels and towards the enemy. Then, another Zero scores a direct cannon hit on the B-17, this time destroying the instrument panel, more vital controls, and the all-important oxygen system. Dazed, bloodied, battered, and fighting to stay conscious, Zima drops the nose and takes the 666 to just below 15,000 feet, where the crew can breathe. But the faster and more agile Zeros follow the shattered bomber down, all the while diving and strafing. The seemingly overwhelmed crew continue to battle on for nearly an hour. Time's ground to a halt, but the old Boeing and crew lumber on through the chaos. While in a last-ditch effort to bring her down once and for all, 5 Japanese pilots fan out more than 1,000 yards off the nose and make a final pass, letting loose with everything they've got. Within range, guns ablaze on both sides. They swarm at, then past the B-17, filling it with holes before finally calling off the attack. Low on fuel, the 666 manages to turn slowly west and heads for home. Just over 8 hours after the mission began, ripped open like an old sardine can, cables and wires dangling through the gaping holes in the fuselage and wings, old 666 landed back in New Guinea. Ground crews leapt into action to assist. Inside the cockpit, it's a terrible scene. Zima is initially pronounced dead, but to everyone's amazement, the brash young pilot still has some life left in him. But the others aren't so lucky. 6 of the 9 crewmen, including Lieutenant Sarnowski, succumbed to their injuries. Zima and Sarnowski are each awarded the Medal of Honor, and the remaining crew each receive a Distinguished Service Cross. Zima recovered from his wounds and lived a long and healthy life. Rumor has it that what was left of the old 666 wound up back in the US in 1944, where some say it spent the remainder of its days in a New Mexico scrapyard. It was December the 20th, 1943, and in the freezing air high above Germany, 2nd Lieutenant Charles Charlie Brown struggled to keep his mortally damaged American bomber on course. Brown had been wounded in the shoulder. His tail gunner, Sergeant Hugh Eckie Eckenrode, was dead, and several other members of the crew were wounded, some severely. Their aircraft, B-17E Old Pub, had been hit twice by flak as it approached its target, the Focke-Wulf plant in the German city of Bremen, forcing the crew to shut down one of the engines and throttle back on another. This had left it lagging behind the main formation of aircraft from the 379th Bombardment Group, and groups of German fighters had closed in like sharks, sensing blood in the water. Up to 15 fighters had attacked the bomber, and the whole tail section was shot to pieces. The nose cone was missing. The electrical, hydraulic, and oxygen systems were damaged. The radio was out, and the entrails of the crippled bomber flapped in the slipstream through gaping rents in the fuselage. But B-17s are tough old birds, and this one somehow kept on flying despite the damage. Brown blacked out for a short time due to pain, loss of blood, and a lack of oxygen, and the bomber spiraled towards the ground. Brown came to and realized that the B-17 was only a few hundred feet above the ground. He somehow managed to get it back under control and turned west towards England in safety, 250 miles away. Brown wasn't able to coax the B-17 much above 1,000 feet, and he was vaguely aware that he had passed close to the perimeter of a German airfield. Soon after, he realized that a German Messerschmitt Bf-109 was flying in close formation beside him. It was so close that Brown could see the German pilot as he gestured towards the ground, telling Brown to set the bomber down. Most of the B-17's gunners were wounded. Only a few guns were still working and none were able to shoot at the enemy fighter alongside. Brown could only look on at the German pilot and shake his head. For a short time, the Messerschmitt flew beside the bomber. Then it slid away above and behind. Brown waited for the gunfire that must mean the end of the old pub. But nothing happened. He realized to his astonishment that the German fighter was flying escort on the B-17. As they crossed the coastline and flew out over the North Sea, the fighter remained on station. Only when they were well out from the German coast did the fighter slide in again, close to the bomber. Brown looked across, and the German pilot looked back at him, raised a gloved hand in salute, and then swung his aircraft away back towards the east. Brown managed to put the old pub on the ground, not at their home base in Cambridgeshire, but at an airbase of the 448th Bomb Group near Norfolk in East Anglia. He and all his...
You should run.
Well, you will be the pilot at the controls, and you will be making the 5 key decisions that will determine your fate.
Last player standing.
Comment how well you
Defenders
did and
win.
if you would have survived. Let's jump in. It is early in 1945, and you are a young 21-year-old pilot in the U.S. Army Air Force. You have been on a handful of missions thus far, but have yet to see any real combat. So, for all intended purposes, you are still very green. But today, that will change. The assignment